to see that a number of us are able to forgo sleep and be able to join these learning sessions. I want to really and sincerely thank very much our mentors, especially for the commitment and the desire to see us progress. This is the reason why they decide, to, leave their beds every Sunday morning. This hour is a little bit very tricky. So for somebody to wake up very early in the morning and log in and it's not paid, and we really want to thank you. We want to very much thank our very own Professor Joseph Ntai for the commitment and for giving us this platform for us to be able to share ideas, and especially for this 1 hour, because we could have decided that this program begins at 4, but we have chosen that we have this 1 hour, especially for us, the students, to be able to interact and share ideas. Therefore, I call upon every student out there to come up, feel free and be part of what is happening in the session. Share your ideas with us. Try as much as possible to open up what you're doing. Don't fall in love with your work alone. You might be in love with something which is not as good as you think it is. So please feel free to share with us, and we'll be able to be guided, because we have seasoned researchers here that should be able to guide us as we move on. Want to thank very much Professor Jeff Kagari. It's always, I've never seen him missing student session. He's always there, and thank you very much, Professor. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, the past 3 weeks or so, we invested ourselves to try to look at the issues of data here in chapter 3 of your proposal. We've been trying to look at the issue of data. We introduced ourselves and the types of data. And now I believe at least we have an overview. When we talk about data, the types of data. And now last week in particular, we tested ourselves to look at how do I design a good research instrument, a good questionnaire. And we had a clip that we looked at, and the presenter took us through how we can be able to come up with a good research instrument. Today, we want to continue with the same series looking at data, but specifically today we want to look at the concerns on validity and reliability of the research instrument. But ladies and gentlemen, before we go there, permit me to share this question with you. Last week, towards the end, one of the students sent to me this question, and I don't want to share it. I want to share this with you. I really don't want to forget. I want to share this with you, that we may be able to give the student some feedback. A student sent me a direct message that was saying that, what do I answer to my supervisor who is asking me to provide him the current debates in my area of research? The question is, what is the current debate in your area of research? And the student wants to know what kind of answer is the supervisor expecting from her. Maybe before we go to what we want to look at today, can we, students, can we brainstorm on this for some 2-3 minutes? Can I see responses from some of most of us here who would have made such a question from your supervisor, and how did you go about it? What did you tell your supervisor? He asked you, what is the current debate in your area of research? What exactly, what do you think he expects from you? What answer should you be able to give the supervisor? Let me go to my chat here, and I see colleagues, students, this is for us. Can we share this? As your supervisor, if I ask you such a question, what's the current debate in your area of research? What's happening in your area of research? What's the current debate there? Can I see some responses from us before we look at what we want to look at? Okay. I'm trying to take through my search here. I seem not to see anybody who is ready to give us some feedback. But let me cross over to Kenya. Let me go to Moi University in Eldoret. Patrick,
Yes,
what's your take?
Yes, Joseph.
What's your take on a question like this? Somebody is asking me, the supervisor has said, what is the current debate in my area study? And I thought the feedback I gave that person cannot be really absolute. What can you add on what I have tried to explain to the student? What is the student supposed to say to the supervisor who is asking, what is the current debate in your area of study?
Thank you, Joseph. I want to say good morning, everybody on call. I'm doing something which is related, or actually it is on climate change. I'm looking at the carbon emissions, which is actually the carbon dioxide as my dependent variable. Now you find out that this discourse actually started way back in if you look at it in our history, it's 1970s, where there was a scare in terms of a cooling on Earth, which again started bringing some worries on climate by that time, because the Earth actually was cooling so much. It was known as global cooling. Then in 1988, again, we heard about the global warming, which was now getting as a real thing that was happening, because by that time, sharp increase in global temperatures were experienced, and many experts actually pointed to that 1988 as a critical turning point when actually watershed events placed a global warming in the spotlight. So there was a widespread drought and wildfires within the United States of America by that time. And then scientists actually sounded a kind of an alarm or warning about climate change, and ended in the media, and also the public paid close attention to this situation. I remember again, there was a scientist by the name John Hansen who delivered a testimony and presented models to Congress in around June 1988, saying that he was 99% sure that the global warming was upon us. As when now we came in the next year later, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, popularly known as IPCC, was established under the United Nations to provide a scientific view of climate change and its political and economic impacts by then. So we find out that global warming gained a real momentum, and then researchers started now digging into possible ramifications of a warm climate. Among the predictions that were made as warnings during that time was severe heat, severe heat waves. They talked about the droughts and more powerful hurricanes, which were fueled by rising sea surface temperatures. Other studies also predicted massive glaciers at the poles melt. Also talked about the sea levels going up between around 11 to 38 inches by 2100, the situation that we are now in. Then they're also looking at the enough swamp in many cities along the east coast of the same country, which was United States. So that's where, when now after that, they gave us now the next convention that took place, which was Kyoto Protocol. I'm just being very brief here, which actually was the first global agreement to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And this took place actually in 1997. And we find out that, you know, what America did after they had agreed, then they came up with so political kind of things and then withdrew out of that. Then later we came into Paris Climate Agreement, and this Paris Climate Agreement in 2015 actually pledged to set out the targets for their own greenhouse gas emissions, which was to cut and then again report their progress among the countries. The backbone of this Paris Climate Agreement was a declaration to prevent global temperatures. They started by saying that it should not go more than 2 degrees centigrade, which is equivalent to around 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That was a critical limit, so that if anything was to surpass and go beyond this, then there was going to be an increase in terms of risk for more deadly heat waves, droughts, storms, and rising global sea levels during that time. Then in the next period of time, 2018, around that time, we see that IPCC, had a far-reaching actions where actually the global warming was too much. So they said even that the 2% they were, the 2 degrees centigrade that they had suggested was even much higher. So the only way to avert the most dire irreversible consequence for the planet was now to target at 1.5 degrees centigrade. So this has continued like that. And the main reason behind this is because of the because of the carbon emissions, which actually has really caused a lot of concerns among the human activities. So when the environment actually is destroyed, in this case, we effectively eradicate the natural systems that absorb and store carbon. So despite the fact that the pollution comes in many forms, air pollution is the leading cause of global warming. The greenhouse gas emissions, which are mostly caused by carbon dioxide, create air pollution. And the amount of carbon dioxide, which is trapped actually in the atmosphere, causes global warming, which also causes climate change. And this climate change, the effects of the climate change now brings a lot of alteration on the planet, causing extreme weather events such as tropical storms, severe droughts, and heat waves, and other things like negatively affecting the crop production and affecting also or disrupting animal habitat, natural habitats. So there are so many people like the academicians, practitioners, they have debated so much on this situation, whether to cut the greenhouse gas emissions or to reduce global warming. So this kind of discourse has really gone so much. And we find out that even presently, as we are talking, there is a meeting which actually started started the other day, I think on 27th in Kampala, which was
Mm.
talking about something which is related to that, which is affecting us as East African and Africa at large.
Okay.
So state actually, just a minute, the head of state and the ministers from East Africa and the Horn of Africa, which is Somalia, as we know here, met in
Mm.
Uganda from 27 July 2022 to call for a more integrated approach and response to climate change ahead of the one that is coming to Africa on 27th, the session of the UN Climate Change Conference of the parties. That is the COP27 that will take place actually in Egypt between 7 to 18 November of 2022. Now, the main reason here is that there is too much rice awareness. They want to create a kind of awareness about the impacts of the climate change and environmental degradation on human mobility. So we find out, for example, that there has no rain actually for the next 4 seasons, especially in East Africa and the Horn of Africa, which is currently actually experiencing the worst drought in 4 decades. Millions of people across the region have been displaced. And actually, they are finding out where they can actually run to because of the famine. The drought is so much, it is severe. So you see it again in these countries like my own country in the northern part, Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, among others. So this kind of thing that we are talking about is fundamental, and the debate has to go on because of the effects of the climate change. In brief.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Indeed, I can see how far you've gone in trying to understand your area of study. Thank you very much for that elaborate response. And indeed, I think it's very difficult for you to wake up and say that this is the answer. If a supervisor asks you what is the current debate, in fact, I would think that your supervisor is actually sending you to go and look at what is written, what is in literature, what's happening, what are the scholars talking about, what is exactly, how is it? You might be talking about something which a debate which was closed in 1990 or in 2000, and for you. And I suspect that by the time the supervisor begins to ask you what is the current debate in your area, I suspect that it's something he knows, and he thinks that you are not at a par with what is happening currently in your area of research. And if you listen to Patrick carefully, he's telling you history of where these things of climate change began to happen, and the trend and what is going on, and he goes on and he tries to explain to you what's happening. In that regard, I would really want to say that if you are asked such a question, you must raise your antennas and go back and try to look at what's happening in literature. What are they talking? What is being published? What is current? So that you don't start trying to explain things, debates that were closed long ago. But this debate will continue. Before I move on, maybe let me see. There is a very long message here from Peace, and I would like to request each one of us to just go to your messages and read through. Let's see, try to just look at briefly this the concerns on the issue of validity, the issue of reliability of your research instrument, especially if you are now at the stage of designing your research instrument. You need now to go and collect your data. You have written your chapter 1, you've written your chapter 2, you're now in your chapter 3, and you're almost at the tail end of your chapter 3. And the issues that you are now dealing with is the issue of reliability and the validity. We need to I don't know why this technology thinks. Okay. The issues of validity and reliability are very crucial, as I said. we need to know what is this validity, the reliability. When I'm talking about validity of my research instrument, what am I trying to look at? What is it within validity? Are there types of validity? I'm talking about reliability. What am I talking about? How do I go about this? We need to, try to pick some lessons. What is validity? And what is reliability? This issue of technology, I'm telling you, I'm struggling to fix things here, but I hope to be okay. Okay. I'm trying to figure out why my slides are not moving. Okay. Good. So, for us to be able to figure out and maybe pick some few lessons on validity and reliability, I want to invite us to watch very short clip. I think it's about 30 minutes, and then we'll be able to pick some few lessons about validity and reliability. But again, some of these videos, share them, but they are not really absolute. But I invite you to go to different search engines and try to understand the issues of validity and reliability, so that in the end you may not have a lot of issues to answer in as far as your research instrument is concerned. So let's pick some lessons from this clip here. Sorry, should be having issues with the system. Someone confirm if you're able to see my screen, and if you can get the sound here.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I can see the screen and hear the video.
I don't know whether the challenge is mine here. I seem not to hear what you're saying.
Joseph, we can see the screen, but the sound is not yet.
Okay. Let me see. Yeah, sound.
Okay now.
Okay, so we can move on now. Thank you for your patience. No, these technology things are not easy.
To begin with, the rules for designing any kind of survey are the same. The survey may be for research in any field. For example, a nutrition survey or a diet survey or a public opinion poll, customer satisfaction survey, for program evaluation like government, healthcare, education, or non-profit agency. The steps in designing all surveys are the same. There are 7 steps which, if followed carefully, will lead to a good piece of research work. The 7 steps are: first, define the goals of research. Next, convert the goals to research questions. Then, convert the research questions to hypotheses. Fourth, convert the testable research questions to null hypothesis. Fifth, write the individual survey items, that is the questions to answer the research question. Sixth, test your survey until you are satisfied with its validity. And finally, test the reliability of the survey. The first 5 steps are explained in other modules. This lesson pertains to the last 2 steps relating to the validity and reliability of the survey. The impact of the results of a research project or interpreting the findings is dependent upon these 2 concepts: validity and reliability. Validity. Essentially, validity entails the question: does your measurement process measure what you intend to measure? The related topic: does your measurement process, assessment, or project actually measure what you intend it to measure? The related topic of reliability addresses whether repeated measurements or assessments provide a consistent result given the same initial circumstances. In research, validity has 2 essential parts: internal and external validity. Internal validity encompasses whether the results of the study, example, the mean difference between treatment and control groups, are legitimate because of the way the groups were selected, data was recorded, or analysis performed. For example, a study may have poor internal validity if testing was not performed the same way in treatment and control groups, or if confounding variables were not accounted for in the study design or analysis. External validity, often called generalizability, involves whether the results given by the study are transferable to other groups, that is, the population of interest. A study performed exclusively in a particular gender, racial, or geographic subgroup, such as females in India, may not be applicable to Hispanic men in the Northwest. It is through proper study design and strict protocol execution that high levels of validity, both internal and external, can be achieved. An important point to remember when discussing validity is that without internal validity, you cannot have external validity. Results of a poorly designed or executed study are not applicable to any population in that particular study sample or otherwise. A common threat to internal validity is reliability. Assuming the same initial conditions for a test assessment or process, the test must provide the same results every time it is performed for it to be deemed reliable. For example, if a research protocol dictates that subjects must have their weight measured, the scale should provide the same weight if repeated measures were taken at the same time. Reliability. Reliability is often at risk when assessments are taken over time, performed by different people, or the assessments are highly subjective. In the weight example, if the subject had their weight taken monthly over a period of a year, the scale may lose calibration over that time, or differing clinic staff may read the scale differently over the study duration. Often, physical assessment techniques such as level of edema in a patient are unreliable as they are highly subjective as they are in the eye of the beholder. Researchers must ensure that these reliability errors are minimized so that if differences are seen in the data, they can be attributed to the intervention and not to sloppy weight measurements. It is with these concepts in mind that methods section in protocols and journal articles provide such extensive details related to how a study was designed and conducted. Threats to a study's validity and reliability exist at almost every turn in the research process. No one researcher can see all the potential problems, so the team approach to the discussion of validity and reliability during the development of the study design and creating and following study protocols can minimize the threats to validity and reliability. What should be the characteristic of a good measurement? An intuitive answer to this question is that the tool should be an accurate indicator of what we are interested in measuring. In addition, it should be easy and efficient to use. There are three major criteria for evaluating a measurement tool: validity, reliability, and sensitivity. Validity. What is validity? Very simply, validity is the extent to which a test measures what it is supposed to measure. Question of validity is raised in the context of 3 points made above: the form of the test, the purpose of the test, and the population for whom it is intended. Therefore, we cannot ask the general question, is this a valid test? The question to ask is, how valid is this test for the decision that I need to make? Or how valid is the interpretation I propose for the test? We can divide the types of validity into logical and empirical validity. Content validity. When we want to find out if the entire content of the behavior or construct or area is represented in the test, we compare the test task with the content of the behavior. This is a logical method, not an empirical one. Example, if we want to test knowledge on American geography, it is not fair to have most questions limited to the geography of New England. Face validity. Basically, face validity refers to the degree to which a test appears to measure what it purports to measure. Criterion-oriented or predictive validity. When you are expecting a future performance based on the scores obtained currently by the measure, correlate the scores obtained with the performance. The latter performance is called the criterion and the current score is the prediction. This is an empirical check on the value of the test, a criterion-oriented or predictive validation. Concurrent validity. Concurrent validity is the degree to which the scores on a test are related to the scores on another already established test administered at the same time or to some other valid criterion available at the same time. Example, a new simple test is to be used in place of an old cumbersome one which is considered useful. Measurements are obtained on both at the same time. Logically, predictive and concurrent validation are the same. The term concurrent validation is used to indicate that no time lapsed between measures. Construct validity. Construct validity is the degree to which a test measures an intended hypothetical construct. Many times, psychologists assess or measure abstract attributes or constructs. The process of validating the interpretation about that construct as indicated by the test score is construct validation. This can be done experimentally. Example, if we want to validate a measure of anxiety, we have a hypothesis that anxiety increases when subjects are under the threat of an electric shock, then the threat of an electric shock should increase anxiety scores. Note, not all construct validation is this dramatic. A correlation coefficient is a statistical summary of the relation between two variables. It is the most common way of reporting the answer to such questions as the following. Does this test predict performance on the job? Do these two tests measure the same thing? Do the ranks of these people today agree with their ranks a year ago? Rank correlation and product movement correlation relate to this. According to Cronbach, to the question, what is a good validity coefficient, the only sensible answer is the best you can get, and it is unusual for a validity coefficient to rise above 0.6, though that is far from perfect prediction. All in all, we need to always keep in mind the contextual questions. What is the test going to be used for? How expensive is it in terms of time, energy, and money? What implications are we intending to draw from test scores? Next, we come to reliability. What is reliability? Reliability asks the question, does the instrument consistently give the same results with the same group of people under the same condition? Other words that are used synonymously with reliability are accuracy, dependability, consistency, and stability. The reliability of a measure indicates the extent to which it is without bias, that is, error-free, and hence ensures consistent measurement across various items in the instrument. In other words, the reliability of a measure is an indication of the stability and consistency with which the instrument measures the concept and helps to assess the goodness of measure. Stability of measures. The ability of the measure to remain the same over time despite uncontrollable testing conditions or the state of the respondent is indicative of its stability and low vulnerability to change in the situation. This attests to its goodness because the concept is stably measured no matter when it is done. Two tests of stability are test-retest reliability and parallel form reliability. Test-retest reliability. Test-retest method of determining reliability involves administering the same scale to the same respondents at two separate times to test for stability. If the measure is stable over time, the test administered under the same conditions each time should obtain similar results. For example, suppose A researcher measures job satisfaction and finds that 64% of the population is satisfied with their jobs. If the population is satisfied with their jobs, the study is repeated a week later under similar conditions, and the researcher again finds that 64% of the population is satisfied with their jobs. It appears that the measure has repeatability. The high stability correlation or consistency between the two measures at time 1 and at time 2 indicate high degree of reliability. This was at the aggregate level. The same exercise can be applied at the individual level. When the measuring instrument produces unpredictable results from one testing to the next, the results are said to be unreliable because of error in measurement. Parallel form reliability. When responses on two comparable sets of measures tapping the same construct are highly correlated, we have parallel form reliability. It is also called equivalent form reliability. Both forms have similar items and same response format, the only changes being the wording and the order or sequence of the questions. What we try to establish here is error variability resulting from wording and ordering of questions. If two such comparable forms are highly correlated, we may be fairly certain that the measures are reasonably reliable with minimal error. Variance caused by wording, ordering, or other factors. Internal consistency of measures. Internal consistency of measures is indicative of the homogeneity of the items in the measure that tap the construct. In other words, the items should hang together as a set and be capable of independently measuring the same concept so that the respondents attach the same overall meaning to each of the items. This can be seen by examining if the items and the subsets of the items in the measuring instrument are highly correlated. Consistency can be examined through the inter-item consistency reliability and split half reliability. Inter-item consistency reliability. This is a test of consistency of respondents' answers to all the items in a measure to the degree that items are independent measures of the same concept. They will be correlated with one another. Split half reliability. Split half reliability reflects the correlations between two halves of an instrument. The estimates could vary depending on how the items in the measure are split into two halves. The technique of splitting halves is the most basic method for checking internal consistency when measures contain a large number of items. In the split half method, the researcher may take the results obtained from one half of the scale items, example odd numbered items, and check them against the results for the other half of the items, example the even numbered items. The high correlation tells us there is similarity or homogeneity among its items. Sensitivity. The sensitivity of a scale is an important measurement concept, particularly when change in attitude or other hypothetical constructs are under investigation. Sensitivity refers to an instrument's ability to accurately measure variability in stimuli or responses. A dichotomous response category such as agree or disagree does not allow the recording of subtle attitude changes. A more sensitive measure with numerous items on the scale may be needed. For example, adding strongly agree, mildly agree, neither agree nor disagree, mildly disagree, and strongly disagree as categories increase a scale's sensitivity. The sensitivity of a scale based on a single question or single item can also be increased by adding additional questions or items. In other words, because index measures allow for greater range of possible scores, they are more sensitive than single items. Practicality. The scientific requirements of a project call for the measurement process to be reliable and valid, while the operational requirements call for it to be practical. Practicality has been defined as economy, convenience, and interpretability. Establishing the validity of the instrument. We shall now see how you can establish the validity of your instrument. Establishing the validity of an instrument includes a review of the instrument by a panel of experts and a field test. The general procedures are as follows. Clearly define what you want to measure. Dollar spent, knowledge level, attitude, people involvement, behavior change, and so on. Locate or develop questions to include in the instrument. Search for existing instruments related to your evaluation, focus, and topic of interest. These may be useful as a guide in developing the new instrument. Develop a draft of the instrument in consultation with some of your primary stakeholders and colleagues. Select 5 to 7 people to serve as a panel of experts. These people should be knowledgeable in the specific content area of the instrument. This group will review the instrument in terms of content, format, and audience appropriateness. It is very important that you inform the panel of the purpose of the instrument. Once the panel reviews the instrument and provides you with comments and suggestions for revision, revise the instrument using the panel's comments for guidance. Conduct a field test to establish the validity of the instrument in terms of suitability, utility, and clarity. Select 8 to 10 people to participate in a field test to review the instrument for clarity, content, wording, and length. These people should have characteristics similar to those of the target audience. For example, if you plan to have farmers as your target population, then the field test, the questionnaire with a different group of farmers in an adjacent watershed. Once the field test results are received, address these comments as you revise the instrument. After the validity is established, the reliability of the instrument needs to be tested through a pilot group. The people in the pilot group should not be the same participants from your field testing. Next, we come to establishing the reliability of the instrument. How do you establish the reliability of the instrument? Pilot tests are used to establish reliability of the instrument in terms of accuracy and consistency. The general procedures are as follows. Compare the scores referred to as paired scores for each question on the two sets of instruments. A high percentage of agreement between the paired scores indicates a reliable instrument. Use 70% as an acceptable percentage level. Questions within the instrument receiving low percentage agreement need to be revised or deleted. If major revision is required, the instrument's validity testing will need to be repeated. Select 15 to 20 people to participate in the pilot test. They will be asked to complete the entire instrument twice. These people should have characteristics similar to those of your target population. Administer the instrument to this group. Within 7 to 10 days, administer the same instrument to the same group. To conclude, I am sure you have understood that research data collecting instruments must be validated and checked for reliability. This will ensure that your effort to do research would be commendable. Otherwise, it raises queries by those evaluating your work and those using it to design their own work. If you are using measuring devices, like for example weighing scale, then it requires calibration. The same is true for laboratory instruments. It is always advisable to run a standard or a solution of known concentration along with the test sample.
Okay, thank you very much for taking time to listen to this professor here. Of course, I must admit that at some point the accent was a little bit disturbing, but I sincerely hope that you were able to pick some few things as you try to work on your research collection instrument. I also want to re-echo this and say that I think it was around 2020, towards the end, Professor Joseph Mackay took us through this. I think was using the questionnaire for Shafiq, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think one of these days we might try to look for that recording, because I remember he took us through on how to go about testing the validity of your instrument and the reliability. So I think one of these days we should be able to go to the archives and see if we can get that information. Let me again say that you are indeed very free to make suggestions on how we can serve you better, especially in our first hour students. So I sincerely ask you to get in touch with me, bring your suggestions. Other than that, also, I request that you get in touch with me and we say, this week, I think this is the challenge, because sometimes I get information from few students here and then I'm trying to look through the different clips and see which one might be useful. So I request that over the week, kindly pass my, give me a call or whatever message, so that we can see where you are, what are you doing, so that when we try to come up with some of these things, we try to come up with something that addresses the need. I believe a number of people are going beyond this. They have even collected their data. They are now not very interested in listening to issues of validity and reliability. Some people may be, doing secondary data, and therefore we could be, wasting their time. But it's good if you come out and you help, you be like, okay, let's do this, let's look at this week. Let's put our minds together and we help each other to grow. Right now, I also want to make this announcement. Students, come out with your work. Don't keep your work to yourself. Come out, come and share your work. Come and get a comment that can help you to progress. Somebody said that the PhD is a lonely journey, but sometimes I think you can make it lonely yourself. But this is a very big community of scholars. Some people here might be, doing their research in the same area where you are. You could share some ideas together. You can encourage one another together. But if you do it alone, the chances of you getting lost and disturbed and struggle are higher. Of course, I know there are people who are really very exceptional. They are really very good. But some of us who might not be at that level, I encourage you to come out and present your work. Get in touch with Dr. Ahmad Walgete. Get in touch with the Bernard Wabukala, Livia, and I am also available. Get in touch with me. I can take the message to Dr. Walgete, and you'll be scheduled to present your work. And I think that is the purpose of this platform, to help you, to help me. We just have 3 minutes to the top of the hour. I want us to say, if you have something that you think did not go well or went well for you in this video, in this clip, in what we have shared today, I just have 3 minutes for you to really make that comment. Okay. Do you have anybody who has something to say for what has transpired in the Students' Congress today? I have my sister Amina is asking for the video. Yes, I'm going to upload that on the chat. My sister Brenda is happy for the validity and reliability. Thank you very much, Brenda. I hope it helps in one way or the other. Peace. I am looking at warehousing evolution and technological development in warehousing. Warehousing started in way back 1990 as a storeroom, but has now changed to a multi-channel facility. So the current debate is 90s. In the 90s, researchers were debating on warehousing as a storeroom. But as history goes by in research, warehousing systems started to change. Peace here is trying to give us the trends, what has been happening in warehousing. And this is, thank you very much, Peace. This gives us some, more enlightenment to understand this thing of, the current debate. Thank you very much, Peace. And thank you very much to all of us who have been able to be part of this first 1 hour. I just want to again conclude by re-echoing that kindly come up with suggestions, get in touch with us so that we can be able to serve you and not to make your mornings, Sunday morning, waste one every time you forgo sleep and come in here. We want you to go back when you've learned something, when you've added something. It's very unfair to make you come up, wake up early in the morning, and then you just go back frustrated or disappointed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael Robin. Thank you for the comment. Unfortunately, I am not a prof. I'm a student, just like you and another person. But thank you very much for the compliment. I can see the direct message. Thank you very much. Right now, we are right on the top of the hour. It's 4 p.m. I would like to thank you very much for walking in the journey with us in the first 1 hour. And now allow me take you to our next session that will be moderated by our mentor, our friend, Dr. Ahmad Walugembe. Doctor, are you on?
Joseph, yes, I'm on.
Thank you very much. Can I hand over to you?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to our main session of our Sunday session. Today is Sunday, July 31st. We appreciate the commitment of the members and your availability to participate and to the willingness to learn every Sunday. Most importantly, goes to our senior colleagues and mentors who have been able to be around over time, participate and give back free knowledge to colleagues, and also enable others to move ahead. Of course, the platform, our platform is a free platform, free entry, free to it. So really, we appreciate especially those who really wake up very early in the morning, give their knowledge to others to facilitate learning. And then secondly, I would like to appreciate also our senior mentor specifically, Professor Antai, for this initiative. Hopefully, and we pray that it may stay forever and ever to enable those other members learn from the discussion that we have here regularly. We welcome all new people on board. Every now and again, there's somebody new on board. We welcome them and we inform that this platform is a platform for all PhD students, regionally and internationally. So I would like to appreciate all those students from locally from here in Uganda. So many of us from different universities. And that's why you will note that in our regular discussions, we don't have any university we are focusing on in terms of the model that we use this and that. But we look at the diversity of the students, and then also these issues are discussed based on that. So it's from University of Moi, University of Nairobi, University of Dar es Salaam, students from South Africa, from Malawi, from Zimbabwe, those from University of Cairo, we appreciated, University of Alexandria, and many people on the platform we welcome you and we thank you for your participation. Today's session is going to take the same format as the two previous sessions we have had. We had a session the last 2 weekends. Last 2 weekends on conceptualization, and it is an open discussion, a Q&A panel on conceptualization issues. And we spent 2 weeks discussing the same. Questions came from you, we put them together. Joseph has been doing that work very well, that the questions that come from the audience, we put them together, and at one time we bring them here. We bring them here for discussion. This is not done weekly. This is done when need arises in a given section. So this weekend, we are now going to deal with other set of questions, and some of these questions, most of them are coming from the methodology section. So questions, we have discussed methodology, we have discussed philosophy, we have discussed research designs, we have discussed sampling, but I mean, since the platform does not have a curriculum, so far we are using that when we finish this, we don't go back. Then we do these recap issues to enable people to understand, learn. And every now and again, we go back to our earlier discussion. So today's discussion will be led by the following people. As we mentioned earlier, Dr. Ibrahim Musenze. Dr. Musenze is the Dean, Faculty of Business Management at Bustamante University based in Paris, but he has worked in a number of areas. He has been a lecturer at Macquarie University Business School based in Jinja campus. Dr. Msenze has been local government in administration in Mayuge district. Dr. Msenze is a businessman, to the best of my knowledge, a very, very active businessman in Iganga. And I believe that he has, his ability to put together knowledge in this area is something that we shouldn't take for granted. Dr. Msenze, we welcome you as a panelist this morning. He has been with us for the last 2 years, almost is part of the team that started this session. So we appreciate your commitment. We appreciate your availability. We appreciate your willingness to support other students to also get PhDs and become scholars. Dr. Goretti Cheyune is also in the panel today. Dr. Goretti is a lecturer at Macquarie University Business School, very well versed in the area of accounting, having been a bursar at MOBS and in so many other areas. She's an accounting fellow, and she has been actually here and there in the areas of accounting. In that area, she's very experienced. Today is coming here as a panelist on our discussion, and she's also among the members. We are proud to have been here for the last 2.5 years as the discussion has been going on. Dr. Gideon Nkurunziza is also a panelist this morning. Dr. Gideon is a lecturer, senior lecturer at Macquarie University Business School and head of department, education. He is very committed and is a statistician, naturally. He's a statistician. Here he is coming also to give us his experiences in these different areas. He's a community researcher. We have been together on the platform, and I think he's among those who have been on the platform too for the last 2 years. Dr. Gideon will welcome you also as a panelist. Then Dr. Godwin Ahimbisibwe. Dr. Godwin also is a lecturer in the Department of Marketing and International Business at Macquarie University Business School. He's a senior person also in that category. He's coming to be part of the panel, and we will welcome him in the same area. So, colleagues, I welcome you, all of you. I just want to confirm that all of the panelists are on, but I think I have seen around almost all of them. Dr. Ibrahim is on. Yes, Dr. Ibrahim.
Please, I'm on. Good morning, Dr. Ahmed Walgembe and members on call.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibra. Can I hear from Dr. Goretti if she's on?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Walugembe. Good morning, everyone on this call this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Dr. Goretti. Dr. Gideon, are you on? Dr. Gideon, are you on?
Yes, good morning, I'm on.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Dr. Gideon.
Thank you.
Dr. Godwin Ahimbisibwe.
Yes, I'm on. Good morning, Gideon, and the members present.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon. Good morning. Now, we can dive into our discussion immediately. And our first question was we have on the ground. I would like to invite Dr. Ibrahim Mosenze. Our main issue is on research approaches and research design. And there's a question saying, what is the difference between research approaches and research design? Dr. Ibra, you have the floor. You can give us some good reactions over that. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. Once again, I want to thank you for inviting me or having me today. I want to thank all those who have been able to log on this really morning call and appreciate your commitment. like Dr. Ahmed has said, the first question which you have asked is about the difference between research approach and the research design. I want to say that these are two elements in methodology chapter that actually tend to confuse students, and not only students, even us as facilitators. And I think I want to use this time to try as much as possible to really bring out conceptual and other issues, that is distinctiveness between the two aspects. Now, I want to begin with a research approach. What is a research approach? You will note that when a topic has already been crafted, students or any researcher has a decision to make or to take. And I want to say this decision involves deciding on which approach should be used to deliver a particular study or investigation or research in this particular kind of context. Now, you will note that based on the nature of a research question that you really set out to answer, whenever we talk about this approach, we mean a broad plan and the procedure. And normally this plan and the procedure consists of steps of broad assumptions. And these are detailed methods that you are going to use to collect data, that you are going to use to analyze data, and that you are going to use to interpret what we are calling the data. Therefore, having said that, I want to note that basically, whenever we talk about the research approach, we need to specify the details. We need to specify the steps that are going to be taken by the researcher on a particular kind of investigation. Now, when you read the literature on the research approach, it is clear there are basically three basic or principal elements or components that make up what we are calling a research approach. You need to tackle the aspect of the philosophical worldview. That one must be clearly articulated when you are dealing with the issue of the approach. So that one becomes the basic or the first component of a research approach. And when we are talking about the philosophical worldview, how do we view reality? How do we view reality? And I think this has been talked about severally, okay? We have what we call the positivists, we have what we call the constructivists, and then we have what we call the pragmatism. So we need to look at this. How are you viewing reality? And how is your study fitting within this particular kind of area? So that's the first basic component of a research approach. Then the second component that you need to address in a research approach, you need to address the issue of the research design. And I think this is now where we are contrasting. We shall look at what a research design shortly after I've finished to explain what we mean by this research approach. But I want now to say that a research design is the second component you need to deal with or articulate when you are dealing with what we call the research approach. And then finally, the methods of research that represent the specific aspects of a methodology chapter that are going to guide you in delivery of what we are calling a particular kind of investigation. So those three must be dealt with under research approach: the philosophical worldview, the research design, and the methods of the research. Now, even before I go further, this is clear that a research approach is a bit bigger. It is broader compared to what we are calling a research design. A research design is simply a component that is embedded within the overall framework we are calling the research approach. So that is very, very important. And when you are dealing with the research methods as a component, you need to talk about how you are going to collect data, how you are going to analyze your data, how you are going to interpret your data and develop into issues of what we are calling a validation. That is very clear. When you are talking about the design as a component, it simply covers the overall strategy that a researcher is going to choose in order to attack a particular research problem or to answer a particular research question that you have already set from the beginning. And I want to say this issue of research design will necessitate or demand an integration of different elements of the study, and this must be done in a coherent and what I'm calling sound and logical way. Now, based on the three basic components of research approach, like I've said, you can now decide to take up the study using either what we call a qualitative approach. You can decide to answer the research question or deal with the problem using what we call a quantitative approach, or you can decide to mix, where you can now take up what we call the approach of what we call a mixed study kind of approach. And of course, we did deal with this earlier. We don't need to again continue to repeat it here. But when you talk about quantitative, we said this is where the research more deals with the measurement approach, and the emphasis is put more on what we call numbers. The qualitative approach, we talked about this, that emphasis is more on words and what we are calling images in an attempt to clearly bring out an answer to the research question or the problem. And then the mixed, you simply bring out what we call a combination of the two approaches and triangulate in an effort to resolve what we call the research problem. So basically, that is what I can say about what a research approach means. Now, similarly, because we are supposed to bring out to the conceptual distinctiveness, whenever we talk about a research design, the design, as I've already said, it is one of the basic components or elements of the overall research approach that a student may decide to take. Now, this design represents a strategy, an overall strategy. It is an overall or arching framework or plan that you can employ to undertake what we are calling a particular study. Now, it basically represents a framework or a structure within which you decide to execute a particular kind of inquiry. And the relevance of it is basically seen in the manner through which it provides direction. And therefore, in the absence of this research design, you may, and there is a possibility that you may deviate from what we are calling what is required, and you may not be able to conclusively and logically resolve the research question or the research problem that you set right away from the beginning to answer. Now, other scholars have tended to really look at it as basically a master plan, and that this master plan specifies two critical issues. The first, it specifies what are these specific methods that you are going to use to resolve a research problem or a research question. After this, it also specifies the specific procedures to rely on for the two major issues. That is, what procedures are you going to rely on in the process of data collection? What procedures are you going to rely on for the process of what we are calling data analysis in an investigation? Now, based on that, I can say that research question represents a blueprint to undertake a research study and involves issues like description of what we are calling study setting, It involves issues like description of the research approach. It involves issues like a sample size determination. How do you hope to select your sample from the population? What technique are you going to use in the process of selecting your sample? What tools do you intend to rely on, the instruments in the process of what we are calling data collection? And how do you intend to analyze your data with emphasis or with the aim of providing or resolving the specific research question or research problem or hypothesis that your study set right away in the beginning to address. I want therefore to say that I want therefore to say that when you are dealing with the research design, when you are dealing with the research design, this ideally gives you an opportunity to undertake what we call a careful thought of the plan, of the design, because without it, you are likely not to be able to deliver the assignment. And I want to say that having articulated this, you will be able to provide direction, and this will assist you as a student to avoid the wrong path and be able to take on what we are calling a right path. Why does it do this? I've already said in the beginning that a good research design, well thought through, is going to assist you determine the study type. It's going to assist you to determine how to resolve the study hypothesis, the study objectives, the broader methodology. It's going to guide you on what type of data collection approach you are likely to take and what analytical strategy you are likely to employ. So this is really very important. And as I wind up this, I want to note that, of course, there are quite a number of research designs. We looked at this earlier. We have the common ones. We have the surveys. We have the time series. We have the ethnography, experimental and quasi-experimental, and many others. But I want to say, we said in methodology, the issue of logic is very fundamental. If you are adopting a quantitative design or a cross-sectional design vis-a-vis a longitudinal design, you must be able to articulate why are you adopting that particular design in the face of existence of the multiple design. So the question of justification becomes very important at this particular kind of level. And I would wish all of us really to appreciate this, that whatever you state, you must be able to justify why you are taking that route in the face of what we are calling other alternative kind of approaches that do exist. I think Dr. Ahmed Walugembe, I've dealt with it, but students also need to know that, of course, selection of a particular research design must be guided by certain factors which they need to read and develop into, because this is also a very critical aspect that we need to pay attention to. You need to consider issues like whether the design you choose is actually practically implementable. You need to look at the users of the findings before you decide which design you are taking on. You need to look at issues of rigor. For example, when we talk about experimental designs, literature says that actually these type of designs are bring about rigor to a lot of rigor to what we are calling your work. You must look at issues of the nature of the research problem. That is very important. And then the purpose why you are undertaking this study. Dr. Ahmed Walugembe, I think I've tried my best to bring about conceptual distinctiveness between the two concepts of the research approach and the research design. I submit and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim Mosenze. Members are already appreciating your the way you have tackled the question on research approaches and research design. Before I go to another question, allow me re-echo our procedure. Our procedure is that we give a question to the panelist. The panelists will respond to the question. We have other senior colleagues in the room. The senior colleagues welcome you and we appreciate you. We welcome Dr. Dennis Musinguzi. Dr. Musinguzi, you are welcome. Thank you. Dr. Musinguzi is among the original team that has been here for a while. We welcome Professor Rola Orobia. Professor Rola, we welcome you and we appreciate you. We welcome Professor James Kagari. He's also online. We appreciate you and we thank you for being with us. We welcome Professor Michael Okoche, who is my co-moderator here always. Professor Okoche, thank you for being with us this morning. We welcome all other PhD holders and mentors on this group who have not been able to retrieve from the big list that we have this morning. Now, all those become part and parcel of the panel. So those will not need to put up their hand, neither to put in the chat. They automatically support the answers given. Dr. Hassan, you're welcome. Hassan Bashir, thank you for being here this morning also. So those members support. These are the other professors, doctors that actually would give support in answering the questions. For the students community, given that we don't have enough time, we'll request you to put all the questions in the chat. Some of these questions are answered, others are referred to the subsequent discussions. So in case you post your question in the chat and your question is not answered, then after that Joseph is online. Joseph captures these questions and we push these questions to the subsequent discussions. So thank you very much with that. We appreciate you for following the procedure. And I think with that, we can proceed. Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim Mosenze, for handling very well the issue of research approaches and research design. And now we see very clearly that research approaches are broader compared to the design. The design is part of the number of approaches. Okay, good. The other question we have this morning is in the same area on methods and methodology. Methods and methodology. I'm happy to mention also one of our key person here on philosophy is on board, Dr. Dennis Musinguzi. So in case of anything, Dr. Musinguzi will be able to give something. On methods and methodology, Dr. Godwin Ahimbisibwe, there is a question. What is the difference between research methods and research methodology? Research methods and research methodology. Dr. Godwin, that is to you. You can respond. Thank you.
Thank you, the moderator, Dr. Orgembe. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm happy to be on this platform. And I appreciate the question from Wargembe that what is the difference between a research methodology and the research methods. Before I start to differentiate the two concepts, I should note that these two concepts have been used interchangeably in most of the in most of the researches, you find, for instance, that in that section of research methodology or research methods, these words are used as if they mean the same thing. Sometimes you find that in some theses, some people call that section as research methods, while other students or other researchers call it research methodology. So in that sense, those two concepts seem to mean almost the same thing. However, I should say that these different concepts, which I would try to differentiate and probably elaborate on. So what is a research methodology? And what is a research method? Now, I'll begin with the research methodology. Research methodology is a framework. It is the contextual framework within which the research is conducted, or I can say it's a roadmap that normally guides the researchers to conduct or to investigate a particular problem. It's the entire framework that a researcher may use to guide him to achieve a certain purpose or to answer certain questions or to solve a particular problem that he could have stated in the initial stages of his research process. So that framework, and in most cases, when we talk about the framework, especially in methodology, we are looking at, for instance, the research philosophies or the philosophical assumptions that you make. We are looking at all that methodology part, starting with the philosophical assumptions, with the research designs, with the research approaches. You are looking at the reliability. You are looking at how you are going to analyze the data. You are looking at how you are going to collect the data, analyze, interpret, and how you are going to, the tools you are going to use. So it's a whole process that will guide you to do your research, or that will help you to answer your stated objectives, your research questions, and definitely, or probably solve your initial problem that you stated. So it's all that framework that generally guides you. Now, the research methods, in my view, and from what we have read, these are techniques. These are techniques or tools which facilitate the accomplishment of a research methodology. These are tools within the research methodology that will help you to clearly articulate or to clearly answer your research objective, the techniques. In other words, when you talk about methodology and methods, methodology is a bit broader. And within a methodology, you'll find that you'll use a number of techniques that will help you, for instance, when you talk about the methods, we are looking at issues like the data collection methods that you use. For example, a questionnaire or an interview guide. You are looking at the research, for instance, the statistical package that you are going to use. For example, if it is SPSS, that is a method. So in my view, I think what I can clearly note is that normally methodology answers three important questions: the what, the how, and why. What tools are you going to use? How are you going to use them? And probably why are you going to use the tools that you have selected? Now, the methods answers the question what. It only answers the question what. what tools are you going to use? For instance, if I'm talking about data correction, in terms of methods, I would say I'm going to use a questionnaire. However, when I go on to explain how I'm going to use a questionnaire and why am I going to use the questionnaire, there I have started tackling the aspect of methodology. The methodology clearly proves the credibility, the reliability, and I think the validity of the methods being used. So in instance, methods is part of methodology, and methodology is a broader term that really looks at the entire framework that you use to answer your study objectives, that will be able to, that you use to answer your study questions, and of course be able to answer the stated research problem. I should also emphasize that when you talk about a methodology, you are largely telling us how your research process will be conducted. The methods, you are largely telling us the tools that you are going to use to accomplish that research process. That is what I can highlight now as the differences. However, I should also note that these sometimes I've seen some CSSs where they call that section, that framework that guides the research as research methods. Sometimes some CSSs indicate research methodology. And I believe that is the reason why we need to clearly distinguish these elements such that we know that methodology is broader and methods are part of the methodology, we need to clearly be able to bring out those differences. In most cases, when you talk about a methodology, you're answering the question, what? When you talk about the methodology, you're asking yourself questions like what, why, and how. And that is my view, and that is my submission at this particular moment. Thank you, Dr. Warugembe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Godwin Ahimbisibwe, for that submission. As I mentioned, panelists and senior colleagues, there's a number of questions that have started coming in the platform, sorry, in the chat. These questions, I don't need to select anyone to react to them, to all panelists and also senior colleagues in the platform that I mentioned. So me, I'll only call upon for the questions prepared, but those in the chat, there is one on, somebody is saying, thank you, kindly help me on this, some confusion on philosophical foundations, objectivism, constructivism, positivism, interpretivism. Which ones are for ontology and epistemology? That was from Peace to Shabe. We note that if it is not answered, we need to push it next week, but I know some senior colleagues will respond to that. George Changa is also saying that it seems research methodology and research approaches are similar. Does it mean they are the same? If not, what is the difference? This is exactly now George is interswitching the question because they gave us a difference between approaches and designs. Now George is bringing in methodology and approaches. So anyway, the senior colleagues are in. Whoever wants to react, you just unmute and you react to one of them. As the senior colleagues come in, allow me call upon again Dr. Godwin Ahimbisibwe. there is I know people have described and talked about the issue of ontology and epistemology. These are common questions that we normally have every now and again. Dr. Godwin, what do you think? Students are saying, what is the relevance? I think some students have known the meaning, but they have not seen the relevance of epistemology and ontological sections in academic research. What is their relevance? So the question here is, what is the relevance of epistemology and ontological sections in academic research? Thank you. Dr. Godwin, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Warugembe. Once again, you are posing a question that what is the relevancy of epistemology and ontology sections in research, and those sections in research. First of all, ontology and epistemology, these are philosophical assumptions that you that normally underpin a particular study. And in most cases, in deciding on the research philosophy, in most cases, the researcher must make assumptions about the nature of the world or about the nature of the area that he's studying. You must make assumptions. Now, at this level, at the PhD level, these sections really are needed because you need to tell us whether, what are your assumptions? You need to tell us about your assumptions on a particular area. And these assumptions, there are a number of assumptions. One of them, you're saying, could be epistemology, and what is epistemology, and another one could be ontology, and what is ontology. I'll begin by saying that, ladies and gentlemen, when you are doing a PhD, we need to understand whether you're researching about something that is real. We need to understand whether you're researching about something that really exists. And that is ontology. You need to explain, to articulate to us that the area you are handling, really, there is some truth about it. There is some reality that exists about that particular aspect or that particular area that you're interested in. Otherwise, we shall doubt whether you are really researching about something that really exists outside there, or something that whether there is some truth about what you're researching about. So ontology, largely, you are trying to articulate that there is a reality about your study phenomenon, or that there is some truth that exists about your research area. In other words, what we need to, why they are very important, or why, for example, ontology is very important for you to articulate it, is for you to clearly demonstrate that there is some truth or there is some reality about your study area. It is very important at this level that what you are studying must be real, must exist. And at this point, you need to clearly articulate that whether this reality is objective in nature or subjective in nature. So ontology clearly brings out those concepts, because we need to know your stand as a researcher. We need to know what assumptions you're making about your research area. And while you may say that, for instance, that the reality is objective, we need to see how objective your study area is, how objective is your research area is. Or if you are making subjective assumptions, you also need to articulate. So in most cases, when you talk about ontology, you are saying, yes, the truth exists, but this truth or reality could probably be objective and subjective in nature. And we need to see this. We need to see this kind of argument that what you're talking about actually exists in reality, objectively or subjectively. And you need to articulate and tell us how objective is your study area or how subjective, what subjective assumptions you are making about your study area. So it is very critical because that truth or that reality must be well known, or you must convince us that what you're searching about clearly exists either objectively or subjectively outside there. Now, on the issue of epistemology, is it very important in research at this level? Yes, I should say it is also very important because you need to tell us the knowledge about the reality you are talking about. You need to tell us how you are going to understand or to generate information about this reality you are talking about. You need to clearly tell us what kind of knowledge are you going to gather about this reality, which you have probably mentioned under ontology. Now you need to go deeper and probably epistemologically articulate what kind of knowledge exists on that particular reality that you articulated. For instance, I remember for me on my PhD, I researched about internationalization of SMEs. And I had to clearly articulate that actually SMEs are involved in internationalization, because once you do not articulate that, then we start doubting whether you are really researching about something that exists or something that is very abstract. So that is my view. These areas, I believe you understand these two terms, which seem to be very big in terms of pronunciation, epistemology, and ontology. But largely, when you talk about ontology, you are talking about the reality and whether the reality exists about your study. Epistemology, you are looking at the knowledge about that particular reality that you are talking about. So probably that is where I can stop, and I would like maybe my senior colleagues like Dr. Musinguzi, probably he's an expert in this area, but I was not asked to explain some of these things, but I was asked why do I think that these sections are needed in research at the PhD level? Yes, they are needed based on what I've submitted. Thank you, Dr. Orgembe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Godwin, for the response given so far. I don't know whether there is any reaction from the panelists over those questions so far that have been put in the panel, or some additions from the senior colleagues who are not on the panel this morning on those questions that are given so far, before we proceed. Senior colleagues, any supplement to the discussion so far before we proceed?
Dr. Walugembe, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Dennis Musenguzi. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I missed, I think, the last two presentations. I'm in the West Nile region, and I've been doing a lot of things that kept me a bit off. traveling and sometimes network issues. But I'm glad to be on the call today and this morning. I've switched on my microphone because my name was mentioned. and because it was mentioned, I felt I should say something. Of course, I must say both Dr. Msenze and Dr. Ahimsiwe have done the explanation so well. I can only add a few things just for emphasis. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, when I was studying philosophy, every word that you would use, we would trace the etymology. The etymology is the study of the origins of words. Where are these words coming from? So that then we can be able to understand in their originality, the original nature. So when we talk about the word methodology, we said it comes from two Greek words, met and odos. Met is the way and odos of doing something. So methodology is just a way of doing something. Whichever thing you want to do, whether it is moving from Mobus to town, you must know, what am I going to do in town? How will I go there? What will I do first? What will I do last? So methodology is the way of doing something. If you want to build a house, you need a method of doing it. If you want to buy a plot, you need to have a way of doing it. And you want the right way and you want the best way. So methodology, you know, it is a concept that we need to understand and appreciate in that nature. It is the way of doing something. And as of course, as Dr. Imsibu was explaining, then the methods are the particular approaches in doing that. I'm going to town to have a meeting. That is a methodology. The method is, where will I hold the meeting from and who will be involved in this meeting? What will be the agenda of the meeting? Those are the particular strategies that are helping you to achieve that you are seeking to achieve. Now, methodology in the context of research. Again, I have to emphasize the few things that I talked about before. At PhD level, at a university level, we are belonging to the knowledge economy. And in the knowledge economy, just like any other economy, there is something that we want to produce. You know, there is something that we want to uncover. Those of you who have businesses of doing cakes, there is a way how you make a cake. And maybe you have different types of cakes. You have different spices. You have different what. If you've not understood that, then you are not going to succeed in what you are doing. So if we talk about research and knowledge production in a knowledge economy, so the production of knowledge also has its rules and guidelines and the way of doing it. This is now philosophy, because if you simply go into something without understanding it, then you will be lost from the beginning up to the end. Every step you take, you seem lost. We talk about sampling, you'll get lost. We shall talk about methods of data collection, you'll get lost. You need to be clear right from the beginning. So we belong to the knowledge economy. Then how we produce this knowledge, how we package it, how we communicate it is extremely important. And because we are talking about the knowledge production, as we said, it is knowledge of something. That's what Ahimsiwe was explaining. It is the knowledge about something. It's not just abstract. Even if it is, you know, academic, at least there is a subject that you are addressing. Now, when we talk about the ontology and epistemology, as Dr. Ahimsiwe has explained, ontology is the reality that you are dealing with. If it is internationalization of SMEs, then the first question is, what are the SMEs? Small and medium enterprises. Now, before you go to small and medium, you are recognizing that there are people in the market there. There are traders. They are trading in different things. They have different capacities. They have different quantities. And these have been categorized. Some have been categorized as small, others have been categorized as medium. Then you go to the characterization itself, categorization. If they say small, what are the ingredients of small? So that when I go to Mukono and I go to a shop, I can say this falls under this and this does not fall under this. If you don't understand these basics, the question is going to be complicated. So ontology is an opportunity from a philosophical point of view that helps you to understand, to grasp your reality, the reality that you are out there to investigate about. You need to understand it, and you are able to identify, the gaps and the issues that you are going to address. Now, how you understand that, it is based on a knowledge basis. And that knowledge basis is the epistemology. How do you know? I mean, the knowledge is in relation to that you are seeking to establish, because there is a lot of knowledge about the same reality. And you may not be able to know everything about a particular reality. You know that your research is seeking to know. So, now what is the relevance of all this? Is that one, it will bring the clarity, it will bring the rigor, and it will help you now to make decision, as we said, on what kind of approaches and what kind of methods that you are going to employ. If you want to go in, IMC was doing with internationalization, it's a concept he knows how we did with it. Some of you might be wanting to know the stocks and the profitability and why it is succeeding or failing. And the best way to do that is to have, first of all, the quantities in terms of measures. What was the level of capital? What was the level of productivity? What was the level of profit? Why did they succeed or fail? Then you say, okay, but I also need the stories of the people, as far as the fears, as far as the relations issues. Then you say, okay, the nature of reality requires that I use a mixed approach, where I'm going to use both quantitative and qualitative. You find people saying, for me, I'm not sure whether I should use quantitative or whether I should use qualitative. You must make a decision, but that decision is not abstract out of the blue. You make a decision in relation to the reality that you are seeking to address. There is a reality that by nature requires some quantitative elements. And there will be a question that by nature, it requires qualitative. So the decision is not just sitting in your comfort chair and say, no, for me, I need a qualitative research. First, deal with the reality that you are seeking to address. If the reality is in a way that it is dealing with quantifiable elements of the problem, then it means you will be oriented towards a quantitative. If you are not a quantitative person and you say, I'm not going this, then it means you have to change your view about the reality that you are seeking to, and look at which other parts of that reality, that you are going to deal with. So I'm explaining these things using simple language and explanations. So ontology is the reality. Epistemology is the knowledge that informs that reality. And these are important because unless and until you've appreciated the reality that you are dealing with as a researcher, then it is going to become completely difficult for you to progress in your research. You will get lost at every moment. But when you understand your reality, as Dr. Gideon said, and you understand the approach and the design, then you will be able to move smoothly, and the logic, it is going to be clear. Of course, Tushabe was asking about objectivism, constructivism, positivism, interpretivism, and which ones are ontology and which ones are epistemology. Now, of course, again, these world views have been formed over a long time. Positivism was born around the 14th, 15th century by empirical scholars who wanted to go beyond, theology of saying God exists and we cannot prove him. And people started saying, no, we need the reality that we can see, touch, and feel and smell. And the question at that time was objectivity of the knowledge that we are seeking to deal with. The knowledge you can see, you can touch, you can feel. Others said, no, knowledge may not necessarily be that. Sometimes we construct it, sometimes we build it. And so these worldviews have changed, have shaped over time. And incidentally, sometimes scholars look at them slightly differently. And you will realize objectivism is related in most cases directly with positivism, because both objectivism and positivism have the same assumptions. Again, Dr. Himsibi was talking about assumptions. It's about assumptions about reality. So you'll find that both objectivism and positivism, they belong to the same ontology and the same epistemology. Interpretivism and constructivism, they also belong to the same kind of let me call it the strand or the category of philosophy. Because in positivism and objectivism, of course, there are questions of what reality are we dealing with? Is it an objective reality or it is a subjective reality? So objectivists and positivists, they are talking about objective reality. Interpretivists or constructivists, they are talking about subjective reality. Subjective meaning that reality is not entirely independent of the person who is researching it. So and all these they have how they interpret their objectivism and each of these have the kind of ontology and the kind of epistemology. So if the nature of reality is an objective reality, then you are going to have a positive ontology, a positivist ontology. If the reality is subjective, then you will have a subjective ontology or subjective epistemology. So the question of objectivity and subjectivity becomes, the underlying issue that we are looking at when we are dealing with these philosophical paradigms in research. But maybe to conclude, people are saying even the objectivity, the way we look at it, there is even objectivity in subjectivity, that whether you are a quantitative researcher or a qualitative researcher, there is some level of objectivity. So we need to make a distinction between objectivism as a philosophical worldview and objectivism as the quality of the research that you are addressing. People think quantitative researchers are more objective than qualitative researchers, because they say in qualitative approach it is about subjective interpretation of these issues. But because we are talking about a philosophy, we are talking about a methodology, we are talking about an approach, we are talking about methods, then also what we would call subjectivism is also following some kind of objective mindset and line that is going to help you verify the data and the information that you've got, so that you can have the justification for it. So don't say, because for me I'm using an interpretivist or constructivist approach, therefore my research is not objective. No, even in constructivism, in interpretivism, we need to guarantee some level of objectivity. But the whole fight between quantitative and qualitative, quantitative think they are more objective, and they think constructivists are more subjective. But even in a constructivist research, we need to attain some level of objectivity. So this is briefly what I can explain about these concepts. It is something that develops as you interact with these philosophies. Okay, back to you, Mr. Walugembe. I don't know if I've put more light or if I've brought more confusion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Dennis.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Denith is one of our experts on this platform when it comes to philosophy. He is very good in unpacking the different concepts of philosophy, and thank you for being with us this morning in this great discussion on philosophy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to move. Those 3 questions have taken us a full hour, so meaning that we can't even finish the questions planned to discuss today. But it's good that the issues come out and they are well articulated. I think at this moment, my colleague Tushabe Peace, your question is well handled. We don't need to bring it back here on regarding ethical assumptions at that point. So as we proceed, allow me now go into, I think we may need to go into questions related to sampling, and then others can come in later. Allow me now invite Dr. Goretti Cheune. Dr. Cheune, we have questions here on sampling, and one of them is, under what circumstances may one use probability and non-probability sampling methods? So under what circumstances may probability sampling used, and when would you use probability sampling, and when would you use non-probability sampling methods? Thank you, and great, we are with you this now.
Thank you, Dr. Walugembe, for the question. And if I got you right, this is to do with the circumstances for probability and non-probability sampling. So in the research, like actually my colleagues have already indicated, there's need for careful planning by the researcher in setting the parameters of what type of research method is more suited for the study that is going to be undertaken, the investigation that you are going to undertake. What is the research method? Is it quantitative or is it qualitative? And because we are targeting specific participants, how are you going to access those participants if you are undertaking a quantitative or qualitative research method? That is very important. But we also need to understand that when we are carrying out research, we are time bound. We are not going to, the time is limited, is finite. So the more important for one to pay attention to the feasibility, how feasible is the method you're going to use in collecting the data that you need to inform your study. And also taking into consideration the resources that you have at hand, because we also know that resources are normally limited. So we combine all that in coming up with the type of research method that is going to be used, whether it is quantitative or qualitative, and decide on our target population. So this takes us to the need, because of the limitations I've indicated, the limitation in terms of the time, the limitation in terms of resources, vis-a-vis the research that is going to be undertaken. We go into what we call the sampling, because we cannot exhaust the whole population. So the sample becomes an appropriate approach for us to access and collect the necessary data. So depending on your goal or the type of research that you are going to undertake, sometimes maybe you've met phrases like fitness for purpose. What is the fitting approach that you are going to use in accessing your population? So choosing between quantitative or qualitative aspect will be determined by your research you're going to undertake, and there are techniques that help you in identifying the sample that you need to work with. And of course, we also pay attention to whether your results are going to be reliable in informing other decisions by other researchers. So the techniques that normally are given in addressing the sample that you need to, from which you need to collect the data are basically two. That is the probability and the non-probability approaches in selecting your sample of study. And that sample you are identifying or you are choosing is going to be a representative of the entire population. Like I mentioned, is that you cannot study the whole population because you have limitations in terms of time and in terms of also the resources. So allow me to mention some of these sampling techniques which are normally used for both the probability and the non-probability sampling. Actually, the probability sampling techniques are largely to do with the explanatory type of research, and also the non-probability sampling is largely exploratory type of research. So when we are talking about the probability sampling, I know that a number of students have come up with the techniques in their studies, like simple random sampling, what we call systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling, and stage or multi-stage sampling. And when it comes to the non-probability sampling, we talk of the conveniency, the purposive, the quota, and also the dimensional or snowball sampling. So these techniques are always available to assist in selecting the sample one has to use when undertaking an investigation. And the other circumstance that we need to pay attention to is the characteristic of the population that we are dealing with, from where we are selecting our sample. How is the population? Is it homogeneous, meaning that it shares the same characteristics? Is it heterogeneous, meaning that there are variance in the characteristics of the members of that population? Does it require an exhaustive list of the population that you are able to number from number one up to, say, 1,000? That forms your population. And how is this population spread? Is it widely spread, for example, all over the country, or it is congested in some one region or one area of your study. So those key elements are very important when we are looking at the sampling techniques that are used under the probability technique of sampling. I should re-echo that the probability kind of approach in selecting a sample is largely an objective kind of method because it gives a chance to have all the members in the sample selected to be represented. Sorry on that. It gives a chance to, it gives a probability, if I should use that, that any person or an element in the sample study is able to be represented, to represent the entire population. So there is some bit of unbiasedness because it becomes objective. There's no bias in selecting the representative in that sample. And that's why it is largely considered to be more valid compared to the non-probability kind of sampling, where we have the conveniency, the purposive, and other types of non-probability sampling. But I should also comment on that the validity element. Much as it is stated that the probability sampling method is more valid, gives more valid because of the unbiasedness in the procedure, the rigor that is involved in selecting the sample. The non-probability sampling also takes a lot of care in selecting the samples that are supposed to be investigated. So going back to the question on the circumstances under which you can use the probability or non-probability sampling method, it depends on, it depends largely on three issues: the size of the sample that you want to undertake, the population that you are looking at, whether it is homogeneous or it's not homogeneous, whether it is heterogeneous, whether it is exhaustive, we have an exhaustive list of the population, and how spread that population is. So there are circumstances under which you can select a sample, still looking at the random sampling technique, the simple random sampling technique. When do you use this simple random sampling technique? If you have an exhaustive list of population, you can easily number your cases, the elements in that population. Say if they are 1,000, you number them 1 up to 1,000, and you do a kind of lottery method to generate the sample that you need. And since we have guidance, mathematical guidance on how to select a sample using the simple random method from your population, if you have a population of 1,000 and you come up with a sample, guided sample of 500, then you would be able to select the 500 from the population of 1,000 using the simple random method, if you have an exhaustive list of that population. By that, you would be able to have representation of each of those members in the population. The other the other beauty about using the simple random sampling technique is that you raise the validity levels. The confidence levels are also very realized, and then at the same time you limit the biasness in the sample that you have chosen. The other technique that we can use in the probability kind of sampling is the systematic random sampling. The systematic random sampling actually builds on the simple random sampling by giving a fair chance to every member within the sample frame to be represented. And it also enhances the validity of your sample, and therefore the results that would be generated from that sample. The other item that we need to look at is the stratified random sampling. And when you use the stratified random sampling, the population may be so big and you don't have all those resources to cover the entire population. And more so, it is varied in terms of characteristics. It is not homogeneous per se. So you need to categorize it into groups, what we call the stratas. So you create the stratas in order that you increase your level of precision in having a representation of your sample, and also making sure that you are systematic in such a way that whatever results that will come up will be representative of the whole population. Maybe to go back to the simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is kind of global in such a way that it's general. You have the population which is properly marked, and you are able to select the sample size. But when it comes to the systematic also builds builds from the simple random sampling, because you don't want to lose out any representation of the population. So you tend to narrow down the population by being mathematically, let me say, the way it is carried out, you need to pay attention to representation either for every, in the process of selecting your representation, you do a random sampling for the first representation, and then you go on adding a specific number, which is normally derived from the sample frame and against the population. So you can keep on adding every 5 number to create your sample, to create the number that you require that will make up your sample, say, of 500 people. When we come to the stratified sampling, I mentioned that for the stratified, you have a variation in your population, and therefore you need to create those stratas so that you increase the level of precision in your sample. The other technique that you need to that you may take up is the clustering. I think, yeah, the clustering sampling. When do you cluster when do you form your sample according to clusters? According to the characteristics of your population, one of the key characteristics I mentioned is how spread is your population? Is it spread all over the country? Or is it regionally spread? Or it is in one, say, district? That is where you are going to carry out your study. That's where you're going to collect your data. If your population is widely spread, then you need to create groups. You need to create clusters to make a representation. For example, if we are going to study the entire country, you may need to divide this into regions: the north, the eastern, the central, and the southern region, and you have those clusters. But again, you go into those clusters to make another selection to create, you may create stratas in those regions so that you increase on your precision of the actual representation of your population. And so you go on narrowing, even the stratas you've created, then you go into the random sampling within those stratas you have formed, you have created. So the kind of the determination on what kind of probability sampling technique you are going to use largely depends on how homogeneous your population is, how heterogeneous it is, how widespread it is, and also how whether you have the list of the population at hand. So those are some of the circumstances under which you can use the probability sampling, more especially if you are looking at your method being qualitative or largely being qualitative or quantitative. And in this aspect, we are looking at the quantitative aspect. The non-probability sampling method comes in when you are when you don't have any kind of hypothesis that you are looking at, that you are trying to test. You are trying to generate a hypothesis. So you go in largely using about 3 methods that you can apply: convenience sampling, purposive, quarter, or the dimensional sampling or snowballing. Those are methods, those are techniques that you can use in non-probability sampling. And non-probability sampling is largely exploratory. You are trying to, you don't have the information per se like you have in the probability method of selecting your sample. You are starting from scratch to build your sample size, and it involves some kind of rigor in generating the sample. For example, if you are going into using the purposive, sampling, you look at you're looking at what you want to achieve, what is your target, and how convenient is the population you want to study. Is it to you? Are they at the right place at the right time for you to access, and then be able to ask whatever questions that you need to ask in building your study. Largely, like I mentioned at the beginning, the cost element comes in here because you're looking at reducing the cost and making it cheaper for you to carry out the investigation. And you may not need to look at all the entire list of the population element. So in this case, you don't have the population list, you are just making it convenient to you to collect the data. But of course, the challenge we normally see here is that you limit the study to that particular that particular population. It cannot be generalized like it is in when you use the probability approach in sampling. With probability sampling, you can generalize the studies because you have accurate representation of your population in the sample you undertook. Again, in the other technique that can be used in the non-probability sampling is the quota sampling. Still with the quota, there's nothing that is systematically used. If you want to investigate about 100 cases or 100 elements in your study, and you indicate that you want to balance this between women and men, say the women 40% and the men 60%, then you would definitely count the first 40 men, and that would make your 40%. So it is irrespective of whether they are representative of the entire population that lies out there or not. So there is some kind of biasness in this kind of method. So, but it depends on the interest of the researcher that this is what I want to undertake. The other, I will not go into the details because I know that some of this can actually be accessed or already accessed in the previous interactions. The other method I can mention briefly is the snowballing. Snowballing, you have the as the non-probability sampling technique, you may get respondents. You want to invest to respond to your research question, and they recommend the subsequent respondents and so on. So with that kind of network, you are able to generate a list of respondents that can be able to respond to your research question. So all in all, I should say that it is important to choose the circumstances under which you are undertaking the research. It is important to choose a sound and scientific sampling method because normally there's need to generalize your findings. And if your intention is to generalize these findings, then you have to use the probability sampling method. And if you are limiting your study to a specific population, then you will need to limit yourself to the non-probability sampling approach in collecting your data and identifying the sample from which you are collecting the data from. Briefly, moderator, that is what I can say about the circumstances under which probability and non-probability sampling methods can be used. Dr. Walugembe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goretti Cheine, for that detailed explanation on the concept of sampling. We had a question on stratification versus clustering, but I think you have tackled it. Let me just invite now still in the same issue of sampling. Let me invite Dr. Ibrahim Mosenz on these two issues, to handle these two issues at the same time. You have mentioned about them, but just for clarity and within a few minutes, because we are running out of time. Dr. Ibrahim Mosenz, there are two issues. One, Dr. Goethe has mentioned about them briefly, but we are still under sampling. Under what circumstances may a sampling frame be mandatory? Does it mean that all the time somebody should have a sampling frame? And maybe from literature, somebody was saying from literature, can you distinguish between a cluster and a strata? Dr. Good talked about that, but just for clarity. Yes, Dr. Ibrahim, briefly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed. And I also want to appreciate those who have raised this question. Now, the issue of a sampling frame, there are quite a number of issues. Some people talk about sampling frame, some people talk about the sampling process, other people talk about sampling units. So they tend to bring a certain level of confusion. But I'm happy Dr. Goretti has really labored to really bring out some of these issues for people, of all of us to understand. Now, I want to first of all say that when we talk about the sampling frame, this ideally represents a database for every researcher, not for every researcher, but a database for everyone within your target population. And that differs from the sampling process, which is normally used to a procedure used to collect what we call a sample. And normally this procedure will adopt what we call, or will use, a sampling frame. That is very important. Now, when you read the literature, a sampling frame at times is called a survey frame, and it is ideally the source. It is that list that includes all sampling units. And the sampling units, when we talk about the sampling unit, we are simply meaning all those members in the target population. The meaning, therefore, is that a sampling frame must include all members within the target population and should at the same time exclude all members that are not part of the target population. So that is very, very important. And when I mention that, I again bring another concept into the frame which we need to tackle. What is this target population? Like Dr. Chayuna has already said, the target population is that group onto which you want to generalize your research finding. And that is it. Now, when you look at the two, the population is general, that general group. And then we talk about the sampling frame. For it, it is specific. Now, I want to give an example such that I can really bring this home. You may be, the population can be, you are studying. Therefore, the population in this case will be the staff who attend in that Makerere University. Now, the sampling frame in this context, who are these staff? It answers the question, who are these staff? Who are these employees? Can we see the list of these staff? We have Juma, we have Peter, we have Jane. So you list them, and then we know that these are the staff of what we are calling Makerere University. And I want to tell you that this is a scientific process. You cannot simply begin to to come up with a list when you've really not undertaken this due diligence. Because I want to say that you need to do this if your research is to have credibility. And we need a sampling frame that is ideally very adequate. I want to give the second example. The target population you are studying could be from ginger. How do you generate that staff list? That sampling frame rather. You can look at data from recent census. You can look at the electoral register. Therefore, the data from recent census or the electoral register provides a source list that must be used to select a subset from the entire population of ginger. So ideally, that is what we refer to as a sampling frame, and it is important. Now, when you read the literature, we have basically two types of sampling frame that are available to students to adopt. The first is the list frames, and under here, as a student, you need to labor and create a list. Okay, it can be a list of schools if you are studying performance limits of schools. It can be a list of universities, assuming you are studying financial accountability of universities. I'm simply giving an example. It could be a list of firms, assuming you are studying firm performance. But it can also be a list of employees, most especially when you are studying them at what we are calling micro level. And you could be studying the academic staff of a university, where you can now get a list from the Directorate of HR, since it is the custodian, and you even indicate the time when that list was good. So that is one of the examples of the sampling frame. There are basically two: the list frames, like the one I've articulated, and then the second is what we call the area frames. The concern of the area frames is basically to deal with the land units. And under here, you are studying villages, you may be studying cities, you may be studying sub-counties, you may be studying parishes, you may be studying district councils, you may be studying sub-county councils, you may be studying administrative units. So when the focus is on such land units like a sub-county, a district, a city, a municipality, a town council, then as a researcher, you need to create what we call the area frames. And that is very, very important. That is very, very important for all of you to appreciate, because it will determine the quality of your research. But basically, as a recap, as I finalize with this, I want to say that the silent features, when you are creating what we call a sampling frames, you must ensure a coherent, you must ensure that you organize them in a systematic, a coherent, and in an orderly manner. Because until you do this, it is going to create problems in the process of accessing these specific units. And then, of course, the other issue I need to emphasize is that in a sampling frame, you must include all individuals who are embedded within what we are calling the target population, and ensure that you exclude all those who are not members of the target population. And then the other issue is the accuracy. Pay a lot of attention on the accuracy of information that can be used to normally contact what we call the selected individuals. Now, turning back to the question, why is it mandatory to use what we are calling the sampling frames? 3 reasons can be relied upon to really answer this aspect, the mandatory nature. Why must we have them? The first is that it tends to guarantee what we call the quality of the survey, period. I want to bring it to to your attention that when the sampling frames, as articulated, are faulty, okay, faulty sampling frames are normally associated with the common sources of what we are calling known sampling error. And where we note or we realize the sampling errors occurred, then this one has an effect on the entire kind of the study. And when we talk about the sampling error, because we are saying without these sampling frames, you increase the risk of sampling error, which affects the quality of the study. So what do we mean when we talk about the sampling error? Now, normally this sampling error will occur in instances when the data analyst does not select a sample that reflects the entire population. So there is a problem, there is a danger that you are going to select, or you are likely to select a sample which does not represent the entire population in the absence of the sampling frames. And this is going to affect what we call the quality of your study, the quality of your study. And it is that really makes the sampling frame to be mandatory. And then the other issue we can look at is with the sampling frame, it is evident, it is clear, it provides a guide to the researcher to draw what we call a representative sample, a process which will generally lead to generalization of the findings to the entire population. And ideally, this is the aim of all researchers. So that one also is very important in doing that. And then finally, when you have the sampling frame, it is clear that you deal with the issues of time and cost. So availability of sampling frame tend to minimize the cost that a researcher will incur in the process of undertaking this common or this type of study. Dr. Ahmed, at least I've tried to talk something about this. If there is anything I've left out, I will still get back and I will provide a response as and when questions unfold. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim, on the issue of sampling frame. I think this is well articulated. The number of questions coming into the chat similar to the above. However, I think we may need to, time is running out. There was something on Dr. Goretti, Dr. Musenze, any can respond to, because this is something close to sampling. In English, Dr. Goretti talked about this, but for clarity, what is a strata? What is a cluster? That can go back into to the panelists and even our senior colleagues. In simple English, how would somebody differentiate a strata and a cluster? Because in normal research, students normally confuse them, clustering and stratification. But again, still in brief, any panelist can respond to this, or the senior colleagues. Bob Sekiziv is bringing back something close to what Dr. Goretti talked about, but we can also help Bob for clarity in simple words within a minute. We normally use simple random sampling, which we say it is probability sampling method. But in most cases, somebody is forced to go and use purposive, which may be a non-probability sampling method, depending on how Dr. Goretti has been classifying them. Under what circumstances may one combine both in one study? Both non-probability and probability sampling. This is what Dr. Goretti talked about, but for clarity and making Bob, who is a PhD student, really get clear answers to this, I will invite our senior colleagues and panelists to respond to those two questions. Thank you. Any response from the panelists or senior colleagues on those two questions?
Maybe as my colleagues come in, about the English, do I need to explain that, what a strata and what a cluster is?
Yes, you can.
When you talk about a strata, we are breaking a population into groups of the same characteristics. Let me give an example. If you are studying financial well-being among the population, among the residents in Kampala, the residents of Kampala have different characteristics. You have the men, you have also the women. You can have that strata, but you can also have again under the strata of men and women. You can have subgroups of those who are in different brackets of income levels. They are men, yes, but they have different income levels. So you create again that other group. So you break the groups into manageable investigation by combining those with similar characteristics together. So you are trying to increase your level of precision when you are investigating the phenomena, and you are trying to analyze. When it comes to analyzing your findings, they could generally make sense to the person reading them. So that is the stratification. You are trying to break the population into similar characteristics, and therefore looking at what you really want, in what you are intending to find out from that population. Then a cluster, like I said, normally we look at populations which are diverse, and we cannot, we may not be able to do the analysis appropriately or the investigation appropriately. So if, for example, if it is a countrywide study, you have different regions. So you make it manageable for you by making clusters, creating clusters, that this is Northern Uganda, one cluster, Central Uganda is one cluster, or Eastern region is one cluster. Then you again go into those clusters you created and form stratas. Because the Northern region, if you're looking at financial well-being, there are again different characteristics of that population in there. So you can create stratas in those clusters you have created, so that you're able to get the information, the information you are trying to dig out from the population. So those are the difference. A cluster can have stratas within it, whereas a strata is not a cluster. The other question was on whether it is possible to use probability and non-probability methods in one study. This depends on the nature of your study. What are you trying to study? What is your purpose of study and your objectives? Because if you're going to use the non-probability method, which is largely qualitative, to supplement your explanatory results, the quantitative results, then it has to be part of the plan, part of the purpose of your study, that you intend to have your quantitative study supplemented by the qualitative, and in what measures? Is it just subsidiary to, and your main study is quantitative, that can be properly explained in your from the word go, your purpose of study and your objectives. And therefore, if you're bringing in a qualitative aspect to your study, it means that you have a research question for that, which you need to state as part of your objectives. That's what I can comment on those questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goretti, for the clarity on those questions. I appreciate. Yes, Dr. Musenze.
I just want to add on something small on what Dr. Goretti has said. When we talk about normally cluster sampling, what evidently must come out is that it is largely used in large populations. And under here, we see that researchers attempt to divide a large population into smaller groups, and it is these groups that we refer to as clusters. Now, after the clusters have been formed, you then randomly, and this is what qualifies it to be a non-random sampling technique. After a cluster or that group has been formed, you now randomly select from that group to form what we are calling a sample. So that is normally very important to note, and that normally we use it in a population that is largely dispersed, geographically dispersed, extremely very large. Now, when we talk about stratified, equally we classify the population or divide the population into small subgroups, and these small subgroups are known as the stratas. Now, the key issue to note here is that when you are using stratified sampling technique, you need to come up with a stratification variable, because without a stratification variable, it will become enormously very difficult for you to proceed using this particular kind of technique. And the stratification variable is that variable with similar characteristics. It can be race. You can stratify based on race. You can stratify based on gender. You can stratify based on location. You can stratify based on the type of the issue element you are studying. For example, type of microfinance. Mention it, but the key message is that you must have what we call a stratification variable. And this is normally used, in fact, it must be used in a population that is not homogeneous, but rather heterogeneous. Now, why do we basically use it beyond looking at the heterogeneity nature of the population? We've seen, and literature has said, that it ensures diversity of your sample, because we are now seeing diverse groups in a sample being represented, and therefore trying to bring a diverse or diversity dimension to what we are calling your study, besides lowering the overall variance within what we are calling the population. So I thought I should really bring that to add on what Dr. Goretti has said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Musenze, for more clarity on issues of sampling. I think let us take only one question, then we can go into we conclude. But I want to appreciate, as mentioned earlier, the debate in the chat of exchange of books and ideas. Professor Laura has been quiet today, but she has been very active in the chat. This reminds me the issue of reading. The issue of reading. Ladies and gentlemen who are PhD students and those who have gone beyond this level. As academicians, there's no way we can just get knowledge only from these discussions and from PowerPoints and others. Reading is mandatory. Reading is mandatory. I remember when I was starting my PhD 2013 there, my supervisor gave me around 80 books and he said, summarize them before we agree on your dependent variable. 80 books. Now, that kind of work, let us read these books that they are putting in the chat here. Professor is trying to put in the chat, summarize most of the things we have or we are talking about. Reading, read, and read. And Professor talks about this regularly. Please go and read. Will you come here for clarity? What you think is not clear, but you read about it, but it's not clear. But this should not be the only platform where actually all knowledge is actually put here, and beyond this, you don't read anything. That is actually accidental or terrible if you go ahead with this model. So thank you for the discussion, Professor, on reading. I think we should go ahead and read. Books are available. Professor Tai normally puts books here in the chat. Professor has said that he will share with you the books that you need in case you send her a request on her email. She will do that. The last question now goes to Professor Dr. Gideon Nkurunziza, which is close to sampling and population issues, which I think is disturbing students so much. The issue of unit of analysis and unit of inquiry. What is the difference between the unit of analysis and unit of inquiry? There is a close question to that in the chat, but I think Dr. Gideon will handle, and then we shall conclude the discussion. Thank you. I'll request Professor Rola to help us give the concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Dear panelists, thank you very much for that elaborate explanation you have given. I was wondering what sampling technique the chair used, but I'm happy that it is coming to reality. I'm sure I have a clear sampling frame. And so we guessed what? Protocol observed to all of you, and greetings in the terms of timelines to all of us. Mine is just a little bit simple, but not simple as usual, because this is a common question that usually comes whenever you present your work. What is the unit of analysis? And what is the unit of inquiry? The unit of analysis is the level at which the study is being conducted. In simple terms, it is the level at which you would want to aggregate your data. Now, the unit of inquiry is the unit about which the information is required. Now, if we use simple mnemonics, you would know that the unit of inquiry equated to unit of analysis. Remove the unit, see what happens. You have inquiry and analysis. What does it mean? It means the inquiry you're concerned with who is to give you the data. Who is to give you the data? Then analysis means that as you have got who is to give you the data, you have a category depending on what you are studying, or depending on the topic you have. I can give an example. You can have a topic that is looking at students' performance, and others looking at university performance. Now, if it is student performance, ideally it means that you are studying individuals. Now, when you are studying individuals, it means your unit of analysis is going to be an individual who is a student. Now, if I'm looking at the university performance, the unit of analysis is an organization, which is a university. Now, all these two have an implication, and this sounds to be an answer for one of the members who raised, when should I use two methods of sampling? If I'm looking at unit of analysis being an organization, I know that organization does not talk. There must be the unit of inquiry. Where do I get this from? Who gives me this information? You must look at those respondents that can give you information. Now, basically relating to, again, your research approach, whether using quantitative or qualitative, that also comes into to see how are you going to select, first of all, the people to give you quantitative data, and also the people to give you qualitative data, and also how you're going to select the organization. So if you are looking at now a situation where you have the unit of analysis being an organization, you must know how you are going to select the organization, and also how you're going to select the individuals within organization. That would imply that maybe for the qualitative, you may use non-random, the people to interview, the key informants, and for the respondents to give you quantitative, you may now also think about the random, which one is appropriate. And then for organization, you may need to look at also how you are going to select them. Now you can see that there are different levels of selection. And like when the unit of analysis is equal to the unit of inquiry, like when you are studying individuals, employee performance, for example, you will find that the employee performance, the unit of analysis is the same as unit of inquiry, because you are looking at unit of inquiry being those individuals to give information or data, and also the unit of analysis being, again, the individuals. I think basically you can see that there are certain situations, depending on your topic, reflect on the reality, your topic. Whether your topic is looking at the unit of analysis being an organization, perhaps the issue resides on the organization level, or the issue resides at individual level, which means that helps you to know your unit of analysis. I would also want to add that given the current trend, most people think there's that controversial debate that some people look at unit of inquiry being the same as unit of analysis, and that depends on where you are coming from. People who come from the area of humanities, especially in humanities, psychology, where they study individuals, like individuals, not organization, most cases, they know that automatically the unit of inquiry is same as unit of analysis. Now, but for those who look at organizations, especially at organizational level, you need to know that if, for example, you are looking at performance of organization, you need to know how many organizations are you going to have. And you must be very clear on how many individuals are you going to select in each organization, such that at analysis level, that's why you see unit of analysis, at analysis level, you must question and see if my unit of analysis was organization. Assuming I was selecting 3 respondents from each organization, that means 3 respondents will form 1 organization. And in terms of statistics, we call that one aggregation of the data to the unit of analysis. So it means that if you have gone to 2 organizations and you are selecting maybe 3 per each organization, you will have how many questionnaires? That means 6. 3 times 2, which becomes 6 questionnaires. And in ideal sense, since you are selecting 3 per organization, it means you have visited 2. So it's important to look at that. And how do we know that you have not aggregated the data to unit of analysis? We look at, for example, you have the sample characteristics for the individual respondents and for the organization. When we find that the numbers are the same, unless you are selecting 1 respondent per organization, we know something was not rightly done at analysis level. So when you're analyzing your data, please remember your unit of analysis before you start generalizing based on the key findings. And I want to say this has also an implication on your conclusion. When you're in unit of analysis organization, not individual, and your conclusion is basically the key lessons you are drawing, focusing on individuals, one wonders, did this person understand the unit of analysis? What about the key recommendation? If it comes to policy implication, where are you trying to orient your kind of recommendation? Is it at individual level, organization level? This should be taken serious because it is a key concern in most cases whenever you are defending your work. The other aspect, of course, as you look at the scope of the study, impliedly you would see when it comes to scope of study, you would know what is the unit of analysis in the study. You would see where the boundedness is. And also that also is a concern on your research design, where the research design can really attempt to answer your problem in line of your unit of analysis. So basically, if I conclude, I think the question sounded to be very easy at lower level of knowledge, whether these are the same and at what, in which way do we find them being the same. I think this depends from the discipline you're coming from, and 2, it also depends whether you're studying the problem or the issue, which is at organizational level or which is at the individual level. At individual level, you find they are the same. At organizational level, or it could even be stakeholder level, community level. I mean, looking at, not community level, looking at different maybe entities. That is very key to reflect on that. Chair, I don't know whether I seem to have answered. However, learning is still continuous. Other colleagues can compliment on that. I submit, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gideon Nkurunziza, for your submission on unit of analysis and unit of inquiry. I think we have so many questions unanswered, but this is the time normally we come to the end of the sessions. So I want people have to move, have to go to church, have to go and prepare and do other things. We can, if there's any question, me on my side, I have so many questions not tackled. We shall get another day for them on liability, on measurement. Some go back again on philosophy and qualitative studies. And some of these have not been captured well, but We hopefully may get another day and have these questions discussed by the same panelists. If there is any addition to what Dr. Gideon has mentioned on unit of analysis and unit of inquiry, or a question that is about that one I will welcome it from the audience and board. Anything to add, panelists, and any related questions from the students community, I will welcome it before I invite Professor Rolla. Yes.
Maybe, Chair, something I've just seen. One raised the concern of unit of observation and unit of analysis. Unit observation are looking at the level at which data is collected or being observed. In that perspective, we need to know that when you use unit of observation, you are looking at it in two perspectives. Observation as a method or as an inquiry. So it depends on how you want to really define that. But at that level, unit of observation, again, helps you to know where you are going to get that information to answer your research objectives in line of the topic. I submit, Chair.
Thank you for that additional explanation. Any other submission to the discussion? Any other submission to the discussion? I'll request Joseph to capture the question that are not answered in the chat, so that we can begin with them next time. Okay, if there's no any other submission or from the panelists and no question from the students community, I now invite Professor Rolla to give us her remarks. Was me a colleague on the panel. Professor Rolla, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ahmed. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
How's my network?
The network is clear. The voice is very, very clear. You're not breaking.
Okay. Thank you, Ahmed. And thank you, everyone that has logged in. I wonder why people rush to log off. Sometimes the best is reserved for the last. Anyway, my duty is to give closing remarks, but before I do that, I would want to just summarize a few things from today's discussion. Today's discussion has been very great, dissecting issues under methodology. You know, methodology is where the PhD is. If you do not get it right, then everything else crumbles. So I urge every student on the call to spend a lot of time on the methodology. And for you to be able to write a very good chapter or section on methodology, you must have read widely. I urge members to read textbooks. You'll get all those things. There were questions on sampling, questions on what is a strata, questions on unit of analysis and all that. All those things are well elaborated in research textbooks. So please, please, please get into the culture of reading textbooks. Okay, quickly, on philosophies, you had for yourself. Begin by identifying that reality out there, the ontology. What reality are you trying to construct or dissect or investigate? What is that reality? then go on to how you are going to go about investigating that reality, okay? The moment you have that right, then writing out your philosophical foundation becomes easy. 2 books I would recommend for you here. There's that one by Saranta Kos. It's what I used. I even have it here in my house, in my bookshelf. Imagine I bought it that time when I was doing my PhD, but up to today, it is relevant. And I keep referring to it because the language is so simple, very simple. And I saw recently a book by Professor Nkunda. He also writes something about philosophy, and he gives examples. So get those books. Then what are those things that will help you to choose probability or non-probability sampling techniques? Again, here I'm going to say this, that it depends on your orientation. Probability sampling is for the quantitative approach. Yeah, if you're from that side, if you're positivist, then it's probability sampling technique that you're going to take. But then if you're going to conduct interviews and all that, then you go for non-probability. Then you find that also sometimes it depends on the unit of analysis. If you have the organization as your unit of analysis, then you will purposively select who to fill the questionnaire. There you now bring in the aspect of the non-probability sampling. So that goes to answer Bob's question. Can you have both probability and non-probability sampling in the same study? It depends on your unit of analysis and the unit of inquiry. So pay very much attention to the unit of analysis and the respondents. I always tell my students, keep falling back to who you are studying. Are you studying the individual? Are you studying the organization? Keep falling back to that as you write out your methodology. Keep falling back to that because it has an implication. Gideon said it has an implication on the conclusions you're going to draw, on the implications you're going to, put forth. Is it at individual level? Is it at firm level? Always have that at the back of your mind. Then the issue of sampling frame. Sampling frame in simple terms refers to a list. It is a list. A sampling frame is a list of units you are studying. A list of units you're studying. Are you studying employees of universities? Then it will be a list of employees, which list you can get from the HR office. Are you studying small businesses? Then it will be a list of small businesses. Are you studying banks? It will be a list of banks, okay? A sampling frame is a list. And it is this list you are going to use to quote your population and also determine your sample size. Okay? And then again, it depends on your unit of analysis. Are you studying individuals? Are you studying banks? You may study a bank and then someone will go ahead and say and get a list of staff. There, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing the right thing? So always fall back to your unit of analysis because the population sample issues rotate around the unit of analysis. Now, still this animal, unit of analysis and unit of inquiry. I always tell my students, it depends on your, you can get guidance from your dependent variable. What is your dependent variable? financial performance of banks. The moment it is financial performance of banks, there you know the unit of analysis is a bank, and there we call it a firm. The unit of analysis is a firm. So you'll have to get a sampling frame of firms. The sample size will be of firms. Yeah. Is it performance of employees? Then there your unit of analysis will be the individual. Get this right. Look at your dependent variable for you to be able to establish your unit of analysis. The unit of analysis is either on firm level or individual level. It depends on what you are studying. And what you're studying is guided by your DV. What is your DV? Is it employee engagement? Is it employee turnover intentions? Is it sustainability practices among firms, among banks, among schools, among hospitals, among, what are you studying? It starts from there. Get your DV right, then you'll be able to understand your unit of analysis. Once your unit of analysis is a firm, once your unit, get this very clearly, once your unit of analysis is a firm, the people going to fill the questionnaire are the unit of inquiry, and in most cases, they are selected purposively. They are selected purposively because you are taking a deliberate step to pick them out because they are the ones who have the correct information for you. Again, it depends on what you are investigating. Look at your variables, then you'll be able to determine who should fill your questionnaire. Once your unit of analysis is the firm, it has an implication on the analysis steps that you're going to take, because you will have to aggregate that information. For instance, in a particular firm, you pick 5 people to fill in your questionnaire. At analysis level, those 5 will represent one bank. And we do this by clicking on the aggregation function in SPSS. You have to aggregate that data. In most cases, what people do, yes, they'll go to the banks, they'll go to the 5 people, and then at the analysis level, they forget to aggregate the data and then analyze at the individual level. When you analyze data at individual level, yet it was meant to be at firm level, the results are different, conclusions different, implications different. At the end of the day, we send you back. We've done this and we will continue doing it until you get it right. So I just wanted to emphasize these issues. The presenters here, they did a very good job, but I'm just putting an emphasis that members, students here, let us pay attention to our unit of analysis. It has implication on every section under methodology. It has an implication on the population, the sample selection, and what have you. So let us pay attention. It also has an implication on the questionnaire. If your unit of analysis is a firm, when I go to the questionnaire, I'm expecting statements to start with, in this company, in this bank, in this organization, and not I this, I the other, it has an implication. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying here is, when you're writing your methodology, fall back to what you're investigating. Are you on firm level or individual level? Pay very much attention to that, because it has an impact on the rest of the sections up to the questionnaire. That said, I would like to thank all of you for having kept awake up to right now, 6:30 a.m. Please, this is a platform where we can meet, discuss, share, clarify, and then learn, relearn, and relearn, and improve ourselves. So let us meet again next Sunday at 3 a.m. Please invite your friends. Don't leave your friends behind. There's a lot of learning here. I would like to take this opportunity to first of all thank our main supervisor, mentor, Professor Ntai, for this platform. The platform where we have benefited a lot. Some of us come here to refresh, to refill. Others come here to, take home new things. Let us take advantage of that. Thank you so much, Professor Ntai. Thank you all the senior colleagues on the call, the supervisors, the doctors, and the students. Thank you so much. We don't take it for granted that you've logged in. You would have gone to sleep, but you stayed awake. Thank you so much. We don't take that for granted. So at this juncture, and thank you, moderator, for moderating very well. Joseph Elasso, were you the one who moderated from 3 a.m.? Thank you so much. With those few remarks, I would like to close the session. Let us close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this session that has been so wonderful. We thank you for the insights. And Father, as we go forth in our research journeys, Father, help us to implement what we have learned. Holy Spirit, teach us new things. Give us wisdom that we may come out stars. And Father, we pray that you bless us ahead of the day. May all our plans be fruitful. Give us guidance and give us your protection. Amen. Amen. Thank you and have yourselves a wonderful Sunday. Today is the last day of the month. Enter the next month joyfully. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.